Hi, friends. So it seems that we are live. People who know me well and have done live streams with me know that I have a hard time telling, but I am going to assume that we're live. Welcome to the first ever Asexuality O'Clock interview. And in today's interview, I am interviewing my good friend, Tria. You want to say hi?
Hey, y'all. Welcome in. Glad to have you guys here.
So, for those of you who don't know, Asexuality O'Clock is my little series that I run wherein I talk about what it's like being an asexual on the internet, which is, always a fun time and never a hellscape of people asking you deeply personal questions and people trying to see if you're actually ace and posing these sorts of ridiculous, I guess they're like almost purity tests, but it's never from other aces. It's always from the allos. And the allos they stress me out sometimes. If you
Uh, yeah, never a hellscape at all, ever.
because it's not like we have to put out our whole lives in order to pass some sort of invisible purity test to be ace enough. If we actually did have to pass some sort of test, I can assure you I would not pass that test because like I'm an ace person who I don't have sex right now, but I am dating a partner who's not ace. I have had sex in the past, and I'm doing all of these things while also being ace. And
Okay, so my question is, and
Mhm.
this is going to be like a terrible question, but how many of us actually have had sex? Because the thing is that so many people go, oh, well, you've had sex. And it's like, but a lot of us tried sex just because we were trying to see if we liked it because everybody was telling us that would fix us. Like, I don't think anybody would qualify. And I think that's the damn point, unfortunately.
I know a couple of aces who, at the very least, if the test was never having sex, they would pass. And I'm not saying that we actually should. That would be a terrible
No,
idea.
that's
But
terrible, but it's like it seems like at the end game is like nobody is ace. Seems to
mm,
be the purity test thing and just no. No, that's bad.
that is absolutely like from some people, that's the intent. I'm not going to say it is for
Yeah, some
everyone.
people it's not, yeah, it's not always the intent.
Mhm.
But it seems to happen more often than not than that is. Um, and also, even if that is the intent, sometimes it's also not necessarily malicious either.
Mm.
Like sometimes it's just people don't know because uh, I I mean, I'm ace and I didn't freaking know until I was 30. So if I didn't know, then how in the world is everybody else supposed to
Mhm.
kind of feel? So
I also feel like the asexual community, at the very least the asexual community that I'm a part of, is more generally accepting of the idea that sexuality is actually on a spectrum. And as such, someone can be ace for a part of their lives and then not be ace for another part. And I feel like that concept is important. And genuinely or generally, like the LGBTQIA plus community is moderately accepting of this idea that like sexuality is on a spectrum. It's just that like sometimes not everyone is. So sometimes the idea that sexuality is on a spectrum kind of like is lost on some people.
it is, and I think part of it is people want things to be simple, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They just want things to be there black and white, as simple as humanly possible. But the thing is that life in no way is simple. Nothing about life is simple, so why would sexuality be?
Yeah. So for the interview, I actually do have questions that I have prearranged. Tria and I have gone through them. They're all okay. I'll go ahead and just that was a great time for a cough. I'm glad I have a water bottle right next to me. Uh, this is a very lively, this is a very like personable, very real interview. So the first question I have, and I'm going to go through them in order at the very least right now. I wanted to go ahead and ask Tria, according to you, what is asexuality?
Okay, asexuality is basically, to me, a long term pattern and I'm not talking about a dry spell, but a long-term pattern of not not feeling a desire to have sex with a particular person. Like you can have a desire to have sex, but it may not be necessarily directed at anybody. And like I said, it's not a dry spell
Mhm.
because there are people who are sexual who are allo who do have dry spells. It is not the same thing.
Yeah.
I understand why people want to relate it that way, but it doesn't affect your sex drive necessarily. It doesn't affect, you know, whether or not you want to engage in sex. It's just basically a lack of not having your sex drive directed at somebody.
So I am getting used to interviewing folks and being the dummy that I am. And because you and I were in the middle of a conversation, I forgot to introduce you to my audience. Do you mind if I go ahead and just read off the bio?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna say Tria, but her full name on YouTube is Triateyal, which I think I pronounced correctly. I'm not sure. Did I?
I think you messed it up, but that's okay. I love hearing people mispronounce it.
Well, I'm glad that you enjoy it because a lot of people do. Um, Triateyal is an ex-Mormon and asexual YouTuber interested in educating people about both subjects. She is currently trying to officially resign from the Mormon Church, but hasn't believed in it for over a decade. Triateyal works as a part-time caregiver for her sister. They both live in Florida with the swamp kitties. Triateyal is owned by a little tuxedo cat named Elmer. Hobbies that interest her include textile arts, cosplay, science fiction, and 50 styles clothing. If you want to find her online, you can do so by following these links, although a DM on Twitter is probably the most likely place to grab her attention. And then if you guys go on to the little description of the video, you can find her links, especially the link to her YouTube channel. That's a very important YouTube channel because she just passed 50 subscribers, but it'd be cool.
Yay! Thank you. I know you helped push for that, so thank you, Luciano.
Well, I was just sharing your channel around with the compadres, and I'm super happy to be able to do that because honestly, you deserve way more than 50.
Thank you. I'm trying for it. I really am. I'm currently working on a video. It's not another Ace video, but after
Mhm.
that, I think for Pride Month, I'm gonna just stick to asexual subjects.
Yeah.
So thank you, Trugs. And I see you in the chat, Wild One. You know who you are.
The chat in case anyone's curious. Normally I'm a lot more active writing out comments, but today I actually have to today I have to look at 3 different screens. I have the Avon wiki pulled over to one side, to a computer on my left. I have the questions for the interview right in front of me, which is the source for that horrendous glare. I deeply apologize. It'd be like that sometimes. And then I have my iPad to my right, which is where I'm seeing the comments. I'm going to ask you a question that kind of relates to what we were talking about, but do
Okay.
you either think you've always been asexual or have you always identified as asexual?
Okay. That's kind of a tricky one.
Mhm.
I think society gives us like kind of a checklist with tick boxes that you feel like you're supposed to tick off. You know, check off basically. And it's like if you don't fit all of those check boxes, deep down you kind of know, and you kind of know subconsciously, but you don't have the way to deal with that or the way to describe it or the tools or the resources to handle it. So I kind of started questioning around 16, 17. I was like, am I like not suited for dating?
Mhm.
And am I not, am I better off single? I actually asked myself that quietly when I was about 16, 17, but I didn't have a way to deal with it. And there's somebody in the chat, and her name is Capserphine, and anything she directs towards me is cool. I'm just letting you know that now,
Cool.
Luciano.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I wasn't super suspect because I have a feeling you would have said something in like our little
yeah,
window.
no,
Yeah.
she's cool, and I'm about to mention her.
Mhm.
Um, but around the ages of 29 to 30,
Mhm.
31 or 32, my best friend, over a course of a couple of dinners, kept mentioning asexuality because she's known me since we were in high school. And she was just like, I don't want to tell you you're asexual because that's not right, but I know. I'm pretty sure you are. I've known you since high school. And she was just like, go over to the Avon Wiki. Go look. Go. And I'm pretty sure that after a couple of more tries, it would have been gone from, please go look at this, you're aggravating me, to duct taping me into a chair, opening up the Avon site, and be like, you're going to read this now. Okay? Read this now.
Honestly, that person sounds like a good friend. So I would have really appreciated someone looking out for me in that particular way. Part of the reason I knew that I was asexual was actually because I dated someone for like a really long time too. But I dated someone the entire time that I was in college who started to suspect that I was ace. And I'll answer this particular question myself. The entire time that I've known about asexuality in any real substantial way, I have identified as asexual. Back before I realized that that was an option, I identified as heterosexual, and that was just not correct. It just wasn't true. I at no point in my life have ever been heterosexual, but I feel like when I say that, some people might think that I mean that in like a braggy way. I don't. My life would have been a lot easier if I had been right about being heterosexual. So it's not a brag for me to say that I'm not or that I wasn't.
I thought I was just confused and broken. Like I was like, I'm a mess. I'm a broken hetero, but like there's a lot more complicatedness in between all of that.
Yeah.
But pretty much, it's it, when I finally looked at Avon, I was like, okay, so having sex didn't disqualify me. Like trying to fix myself didn't disqualify me.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I was trying to fix myself all of those times. And then like I saw the different attractions, the split attraction model, and it was just like, okay, this all makes sense. And now I know why my best friend was pushing so hard. Because, like I said, I kind of questioned at 16, 17. I was just like, I don't even know if I'm suited for dating at all. But then I just like put it to the side and was like, well, this is what is expected of me. Let me try and do this.
It is really frustrating because there was a long time when I did that as well. I went to a Christian school, and you and I talked about this in the DM, but this is also like public knowledge. I've been a public face in the secular movement for such a long time, and I've spoken pretty candidly about the school that I went to. But I was starting to piece together that I was queer little by little, even as like a young kid. And going to that school really set me backward, and it made me hate the part of myself that I thought was queer. For a long time, I've had an idea for a video series wherein I have conversations with other YouTubers who went to religious private schools. And I actually am working on that series. I want to have like a set of questions, and then like it's going to be a little bit like this, but that's going to be the whole series. And I'm thinking that I might do a live stream in the next couple of weeks wherein I just talk about what it was like going to that school for me, so that way I can be like, hey, this is the prologue. But going to that school really did set me backwards, and it made me think that I was broken, because before then I knew that like being at the very least homosexual was a sin, and I knew that that was bad, but I didn't really understand what that meant until I was in an environment that was entirely religious.
Yeah, I grew up super duper Mormon, and like that was my entire worldview. And in Mormonism, if you don't get married, the best you can hope for, like as far as like what happens after the resurrection and everything, the best that you can hope for is to be a servant to your family. Like if you get um I'm sorry.
The comments make me laugh too.
I'll deal with that in a moment. But the I turned 19, and all of a sudden everybody came crashing down on me
Mhm.
because like you have to get temple married in order to get all of the rewards in heaven. You have to have a temple marriage. It is a requirement.
Yeah.
It's not a suggestion, it's a requirement. And so I was researching and I was like, so what happens if I don't get temple married? And it was basically your dad and your mom will be gods because they got temple married and they lived their lives in a good Mormon way,
Yeah.
and you will be a servant to them.
I feel like people don't know that much about Mormonism because like I have a friend who's a Mormon and he's a good friend of mine. He and I disagree on a whole bunch of stuff. He is a Chilean Mormon, which is also like you and I were talking over DMs a couple of hours ago, and I mentioned that like being a Hispanic Catholic is like a whole different monster than being like a white Catholic, which is true.
Yeah.
Especially because I'm both a white person and a Hispanic person, and I was both a Hispanic Catholic and a white Catholic. But he told me a lot about Mormonism that I didn't know because like I had only the basic understanding of Mormonism. And he told me about like being temple married. He told me bits and pieces about the Mormon idea of the afterlife. And it was really interesting, but like also it was kind of bananas. It was nothing like what I imagined it had been.
Yeah, yeah, and that's actually goes ties in a little bit with the how did you know you were asexual?
Hmm.
Because like looking back, I was like, there were so many hints, and my resistance to wanting to be matched up, and my resistance to wanting to be sent to the dating meat market, so to speak, just that should have been a clear like sign for me that really should have been, but it wasn't because in Mormonism asexuality doesn't exist. Um, it's not a thing. You are everybody is cis het, and if you don't fall into that, then we don't talk about it unless it's homosexuality.
Yeah.
Everything else is not talked about. And transgenders don't exist. They do acknowledge the existence, but it's basically their party line is you had a spirit before you were born. That spirit was male or female. You cannot be both, and you cannot be different than the one that you were assigned at birth. But oh,
It's
yeah,
heavy stuff. Being Catholic, I knew a decent amount about Catholicism. I don't anymore. I've just sort of forgotten a lot of what I knew. Like growing up, people who don't know me very well probably assumed I was Catholic my whole life before I became like a non-Christian. But that wasn't the case with me. I was Catholic and then I was evangelical and then I was non-denominational. So like I tried out the three big denominations, but I was never very knowledgeable about like the small ones. But that's my ignorance, and I'm ignorant of a whole lot of things. This is a thing we can talk about at a later time. I wanted to ask you, and I'm pretty sure we already got the answer to this when I was doing the introduction. But what do you do as your career? Like, what is your career?
I am my sister's caregiver,
Hmm.
which can be very interesting at times. Um, just a lot of it is organizational stuff,
Hmm.
like keeping her room to where things are safe for her, like making sure that things are available for her to get for herself. Like, I don't have to physically sit down and feed her, but she doesn't like cook.
Yeah,
So I have to do things like make sure that she has food available to her and make sure that she gets to her doctor's appointments. Basic, basic stuff. It's not anything really super interesting. Um, Although there are moments where life is just and it comes and goes. There are moments where life is like, uh, this is too much. And then there are other times where I can almost completely leave her to her own devices. It depends from day to day.
yeah. Part of the reason I ask questions like that, and in this particular interview, unfortunately, a lot of the focus is not a lot of the focus, but like a fair amount of the focus is going to be asexuality. I do want people to have like a wider understanding of what life is like for aces, and also that we can be found working in any career. I feel like a lot of people only see aces like on YouTube and online. And it's true that some asexual voices have managed to become like professional YouTubers, have managed to become professional voices in like media, and they have like careers that revolve around this. But a whole bunch of us are like small YouTubers. I'm one of the voices that's gradually getting more subscribers, but that's because I talk about like so many different things that people who have an interest in humanism or politics or history can come to my channel and they can find hours of content. And now people who are interested in asexuality can come to my YouTube channel and now they can find hours of content. But like this time last year, I only had like one video about asexuality and it was me coming out online.
Yeah, like mine. I unfortunately I feel like I'm extremely uninteresting outside of my views. Like
That's
my
not
views
true.
themselves are interesting, but like pretty much I'm a nerd who dabbles in cosplay. I'm not good at it, but I dabble in it and I do pinups. But I mean, outside, if you have interest in those things, then I can talk your ear off. But that's not necessarily like considered interesting by everybody.
I mean, I find that interesting, and I feel like a lot of people do. I do so many different things that the reality is, like, if someone has an interest in something aside from sports, I can probably talk to them in some way that is, like, a little bit engaging. But that's because I guess you could say I've had, like, a full life that's enabled me to be able to do so many things. Like, right now, I'm a graduate student. I'm studying to get a master's degree in peace and conflict studies, but I'm also like gonna start to work towards becoming an ordained secular minister and like being able to have like humanistic congregations. And so like I'm interested in a whole bunch of different things. And it's funny trying to like find the thing that I'm the most interested in. I would say that it's probably asexuality. I really like being a voice and showing people what an asexual looks like.
Yeah, I've actually kind of considered getting the ability to like officiate weddings, partially because, and we touched on this a little bit earlier about how temple marriage is like the ultimate big thing in Mormonism, and I was just like, you know, a big screw you to my old church would be for me to officiate like weddings. Just
Hmm.
and be like, I don't care as long as it's two consenting adults who are happy and want to celebrate. Cool with that. I kind of want to officiate. just, just be like, this is so anti what I used to be. Let's rebel. Yay.
For me, like I don't just want to be able to officiate weddings, although technically I can now. I went ahead and got an ordination through one of the groups that gives them like almost for free online. But like I want to have like an actual congregation of humanists because in my community, I'm Hispanic. And a lot of Spanish speaking atheists in the United States continue to go to church because churches provide like a community. And in some cases, there are some churches that are perfectly fine with some of their folks being atheists because like they care about the numbers and they care about helping the community more than they care about like the religious beliefs of their congregants. But like I do want to build a space that's open not just for non-theists, but also for theists, for anyone who wants to like come in and have like a tradition of going to something like church and celebrating and having a community and also like helping your community. Like
Yeah.
those are things that fascinate me about this, but I understand that my position's definitely like odd.
I kind of like it because in my case, I kind of, there are some aspects of Mormonism that I do kind of miss. Not many,
Yeah.
but the few things that I did love, um, I haven't been able to really replace. Um, I loved our potluck dinners on the grounds with all the kids running around and music playing and everybody like sitting around eating really good food and like listening to each other's stories and things like that. And it's doable in other spaces,
Hmm.
but it's not as easy to access. And I kind of wish I could be what's called a cultural Mormon, but I dislike the policies and I
Yeah.
dislike the organization so much that I can't justify doing that as much as I miss certain aspects.
I get that. Being a cultural Catholic is extremely popular among younger Latinx folks. And I'm a social justice person. I use the term Latinx. I'm not going to ask other people to, but I'm also like, I'm someone who like I get annoyed because lots of Hispanic folks like to bully people who use the term Latinx, and I think it's dumb. I'm just like, if you're a gender non-binary person or if you're a trans person, you probably like the term Latinx, and I use it just because I think that like Spanish being the gendered language that it is frustrating. But the next question I wanted to ask you was, has being asexual affected your relationships? Obviously, not just romantic ones, but also friendships. And if it has, do you mind sharing how it's affected them?
Yeah, I've got no problem sharing that. As far as romantic ones, romance for me is pretty much dead, and in a lot of aspects because I am not sure how I feel about romance in general. I honestly wonder if I just want a queer platonic partnership
Yeah.
instead of like a traditional one, especially, and it's not just because of the no sex thing. It's because as I get older, the things that I want have changed so drastically
Mm-hmm.
that like that just sounds really appealing. Like having a super best friend who's your life partner, who's with you through all the good and the bad stuff. Um, that's the kind of thing that I want. It's just hard because the amount of people who want that kind of thing is very, very low. And
Yeah.
we're all spread out. And I'm a physically affectionate person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so like long distance really does not work for me.
Yeah.
But if you kind of have to go long distance to look
Mm-hmm.
99% of the time. So it's kind of like this trap of, all right, so if it happens, great. If not, I've got a wonderful life to live. Um, as far as my friendships go, I get really intense with my friends sometimes. Like I get
I can relate.
attached. I get attached and I'm like, you are mine. And people are like, whoa, don't take this so seriously. Except for one person who's in the chat with us tonight. But like I kind of scare people off sometimes once I get it fully attached. Because I'm like, guess what? You're mine. You can't get rid of me now. But my friendships are almost a spiritual experience for me. It really is, and I know that that sounds really weird and wild, but that's kind of how it is. As far as my family relationships go, um, I see you, wild child. Uh, um, the as far as my family relationships go, I'm not out with my entire family. I'm pretty sure most of them have figured out because I post a whole bunch of asexuality stuff on my Facebook.
Yeah, that will do it.
So I'm pretty sure they figured out. None of them have said anything directly to me. I'm pretty sure some of my family members have my timeline on mute for that reason. But as far as like my immediate family, my dad and my sister, my dad actually told me that he felt similar to what I feel as far as relationships. Um, and and I was like, wow, I kind of wish I had this information when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
but he's fully accepted it. He's heartbroken that he's not getting grandkids. And I'm not saying that if you're ace you can't have kids. I'm just saying that as far as my aceness goes,
Mm.
that's kind of part of the territory.
Yeah.
Is I'm not really sure I want kids. And so I've told him, and he says, you know what, that's fine. I don't, I'm not going to be the dad that pressures you into stuff that makes you mentally unhappy.
Yeah.
So I've done well as far as family relationships go. Um, I have lost one or two friends after coming out, but those were extreme cases. And to be honest, that was kind of the final nail in the coffin. There was other stuff that I was ignoring and like doing okay with. And then I was just got to a point where it was like, why am I putting up with this? So I think I've done okay as far as that goes. I've also completely left church, and my asexuality was actually a direct part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did lose a lot of my church community, and I still miss some of them. I honestly do, but the way the Mormon church is set up is it's sometimes hard to interact with people you care about when you walk a separate direction from them.
I understand that. So for me, like being asexual doesn't really affect many of my relationships. Not just like my relationships with potential partners, but also like, and that's partially because I'm demisexual, and like the person I'm dating right now is the one person I've ever experienced a sexual attraction to. And that's like one of those things that some people might consider a personal detail, but like as an asexual advocate, I'm willing and I'm comfortable talking about these sorts of things. And my partner and I have spoken about this. Like she knows about all of this stuff. In my case, I did lose friends and families. Friends and families, like my whole family. I lost friends, and some family members don't consider me part of the family anymore. Usually not because of the asexuality, but because of the atheism, which is weird because I'm the only openly queer member of my family, but I'm not the only atheist in my family, so I don't understand. Like, and it's not even that the other atheist was like a secret atheist. The other atheist was a college professor who was known to be an atheist, who was like public and wrote about atheism. So I don't understand why like it was my atheism that the family was like, no.
I think it's the double whammy. I think it's the combination of both. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, you've stepped too far. We can't accept both. Like, I haven't told any of my family that I'm atheist. I don't plan on it because certain parts of my family are ministers,
Mm-hmm.
and I know exactly how that's going to go. In fact, there have been times where I'm like, I love you, family. I know that being a Christian is super duper important to you, but you've got it cranked up to an 11. Just could you knock it down to like a 6 or a 7? Just for a couple of minutes, give the rest of us a break. So I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm telling any of them I'm atheist.
It's really interesting to me to hear people talk about something like that because in Latin America, and I can say this honestly, I was raised in Latin America. I'm not just someone whose parents are Hispanic. I actually like spent several years in places like Honduras, Colombia, and Panama. There's actually like an extent to which you can be over religious. Like it's normal to be Catholic and to go to church. It's normal to be like even I think they're called in English altar boys. Pretty sure that's the
Yeah.
term. Like those things are normal. Even being a priest, but like going on missions, that's like, and this is a really big thing with like Latin American Mormons, especially. They'll experience some isolation from other Latin Americans because they're seen as like so religious. So like you
Yeah.
can't be irreligious, but you also can't be super religious. And I think that's a fascinating tightrope to walk.
Yeah. You're actually pushed in the Mormon church to be super religious. I don't I kind of broke a lot of the rules. Um, because like I was taught that you're supposed that, the gift of the Mormon gospel is the greatest gift you can ever give a friend.
Hmm.
And like I was kind of like, well, if my friends want to know, of course they'll ask. I'll just live the life the way that I feel like I should. And, if they get curious or they want to know, they'll ask. And my family used to catch a lot of heat because none of us would like go out and actually try to convert people. And like conversion is a huge deal. Like it's like there's a phrase, every member a missionary.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was like there were definitely some things I was a jackass about. There were definitely some things that I was probably a bit too super into, but I was never one of those like, oh, I have to bring everybody into my religion types. And that's a big no-no in the Mormon church. Um, and it's kind of funny for me to watch because when I was growing up, I didn't know of very many people who weren't all in. The way it's set up is you're really supposed to be all in or you're supposed to be all out. There's no in between. And now people are getting to a point where they're like, I can't live my life this way. And so they're actually kind of more moderate and in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was growing up, that is super rare, just extremely rare.
Now we're going to get into questions that are, like, I guess a little bit more specific, but are also not actually about the people who are, like, being asked them, which I feel like for some aces is probably, like, a relief. Have you ever seen any asexual characters in media? And not just, like, in TV, but also in books and in other forms of literature?
I'm going to go ahead and drop the link that I have because I found this right after you told me about this question.
Yeah.
I don't really know of a lot of ace characters in TV. Now, granted, I don't watch a lot of TV,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't watch a lot of movies. I tend to have movies and TV on as a background thing. So I usually put on something that I'm familiar with, or I've watched quite a few times. Um,
I didn't get a chance to actually look at this list. So now is the first time that I'm like looking through and I'm really curious.
I checked the list before I shared it. So as far as I can tell, that list is legit.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm looking right now to see if there's any characters I know. There are a handful of manga. I know that like manga exists that have asexual characters. I've
I think
never read
isn't Haruhi kind of arguably asexual? Like
from Oram
somewhere,
High School Host Club.
yeah. I mean, I say arguably because even though she does fall in love with the main character at the end, like there was a lot of character building before that actually happened.
So then she could be Demi slash Gray.
Yeah,
Demi and Gray are not the same thing. And like
yeah.
as a Demi person, it kind of annoys me when people conflate them, but like people don't know either. So I know some people are probably gonna like
Well, and the thing is that I kind of wanted to bring that up
mhm,
is like all of my so-called asexual icons in movie and TV are arguably so. Like none of them that I've seen are really explicit. They don't come out and say it in a way that you can't argue for or against them. Stuff like Sheldon. Sheldon is technically a demisexual, but but they can be like, well, he was turned straight, or he just found the right one, or all of those little things that we're told that aggravate us. And it's just like, I really wish that if you're going to code something as asexual,
mhm.
you need to do it in a way that offers us good representation, because I love Big Bang Theory. I really do. And I realize that you're talking about a comedy of stereotypes, but it's sad that often that is our representation, is comedies of stereotypes. We don't get any actual good, okay, this shows the spectrum of asexuality. This shows, this shows, queer platonic relationships, or somebody who's gray, or somebody who's demi, or somebody who's both ace and arrow. Like the way that it's shown is either we're broken and needing fixing, or we're robots, or there's something diseased and wrong with us. And like, or we have to settle. Like, I did a lot of settling for characters that I felt represented me. Um, so it's really frustrating. However, that asexual book recommendations, it looks like people who are actually somewhere on the ace spectrum or know people who are writing those books. So I feel like even though those aren't mainstream, at least we're starting to get a little bit of something else to turn to and to say, hey, that's me, or say, hey, have you read this book? This is kind of describes some of the things that I go through.
I didn't know that Bub was interviewing you tomorrow, but yeah,
Yeah.
Bub absolutely has a ton of great stuff to look forward to. I think that the
Yeah.
questions that I ask come from like my own lived experiences as an ace person. So I ask questions that are both fairly generic, but also one not like offensive
Yeah, I
or
didn't
anything.
go deep. Yeah, we're not going super deep into the Exmo stuff, Bub,
Mhm.
which I know is kind of what you wanted to go into. So I'm not ruining my interview with you tomorrow.
I mean, people can be interviewed on more than one place. Like
Yeah.
I've done a deconversion. I think I've done 3 different deconversion interviews. And those are always like really fun. I like talking about like my story. The first time I did a deconversion interview, I talked about like anger as an atheist. And then the second time I talked about how being queer influenced my asexual, I talked about how being queer influenced me and ultimately helped push me towards atheism. But then on my third time, which never really got aired, I talked about like something else, but that was a while ago and I forgot. Are you still here? I don't know if the audio is acting up. Oh, okay. Well, so Tria has fun audio stuff. She informed me ahead of time that this is a thing that might happen. She'll be right back, but I hope that everyone's having fun. I know that I'm probably not like the most spectacular interviewer, but I do think it's fun to interview people. I think it's fun to bring people on my channel and to talk with folks. And hey, Tria, how are you?
Hey, I'm so sorry. It was
It's
all
okay.
at all this week, and now it's like, hey, interview time. Guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna partially unplug.
I feel like this is a good time to mention that there is going to be an after party for this interview. I don't know if anyone's going to be able to come on, but if you do want to come on, this is a perfect time for y'all to start sending us messages, for y'all to start commenting in the thing. And if you don't follow me or Tria on Twitter, follow one of us so that way one of us can send you the link because we do a Google Hangout style. We are basic over here at Luciano's Logic, and I don't mean that Tria is basic. I mean that I'm basic.
I'm pretty basic too, I think. Um, but yeah, anyways, to wrap it up, like we do have some representation, but most of it is flawed,
Mhm.
especially in mainstream. You have to go looking for it. And while there are issues with asexuality being shown mainstream, there's pros and cons to it. I
Yeah,
really wish we would because it would do two things. It would make asexuals go, maybe this is what I am a lot quicker
yeah.
than many of them do because we shouldn't be figuring out our sexuality in our 30s and 40s. That's what your college years are for. Um, and even 50s. Um, and the other side of that is, you know, if we have the proper representation, people can get to know us without a lot of the stereotypes. And I think that that's something that I wish that we had more available.
We're not quite done with this stream. We still got a good 15 minutes that we could stay on this one with no problems, with no overlap for the after party. But I am gonna say that if you guys aren't subscribed to Tria, you absolutely should be. Tria only has 2. So my first channel just asked if we have any good examples of representation, and I would love for you to answer that. But I am gonna mention this one thing. Tria only has 2 videos up, but both of them are about asexuality / asexual perspectives, and both of them are fantastic. So seriously, if you guys are subscribed to me, especially if you're subscribed to me to listen to me talk about asexuality, I highly recommend that you go and check out Tria. But do you think we have any good examples of representation?
You know, it's hard for me to think of any. I'm not saying that they're not out there,
Mm-hmm.
but again, you also have to remember, like I said, I don't watch a lot of TV or
Yeah.
movies a lot, and I'm getting back into reading. But as far as I know, and I am very happy to be corrected on this, I don't know of any personally.
I write stories, and the characters in the stories that I write are usually queer, but like I'm a really bad writer in the sense like I'll start something that's really cool, and then it won't really, like, I'll either stop writing because life gets too busy or whatever. But I write on Royal Road, and I'm writing 2 stories on Royal Road. I'm probably gonna have a live stream where I talk specifically about like me as a writer and the stuff that I write because I think it's neat. In the story that I updated today, which is called "Why BOP When You Can Be a God," and it's an isekai type story for those of you who are into anime and stuff, and it pokes fun at like light novels. But the main character in it, like I guess the sort of super protagonist, is asexual. It's just that that hasn't been brought up in the story because the story is just starting. So.
Yeah. Um, and also, I did want to mention before I forget, as far as media goes, also, I've been starting to notice that nerd bands start, like, that go to cons and perform at cons and stuff, actually have members of their bands who are asexual.
Mhm.
And I'm going to plug a group that I absolutely adore. I'm sorry, but the um, but the Misbehaving Maidens, they do wenching songs, they do nerd songs, and most of them are dirty. And the person who writes the dirtiest lyrics is their asexual Flintlock. And I love Flintlock. Flintlock is my icon.
I'm going to do a live stream where I talk about like asexuality and sex and pleasure because like people know this about me. I I'm not gonna say that I'm like a particularly not safe for work person because my like Twitter feeds are clean. I don't post anything not safe for work or anything. But like I have been engaged in, like, I've sold erotica before, I've written erotica before. Like I think that people have this weird idea that like if you're asexual, you can't be involved in these communities or you can't like be sex positive, and that's the thing that annoys me. But I feel like ultimately we probably should focus on making sure people understand asexuality before we dive into the nuances of asexuality and sexuality.
I know I want to be on the 301 level, but everybody else is on the 101. I'm just going,
That's
no,
such a
catch
good
up.
analogy. I never thought of it that way, but it's so good.
um, my friend just reminded me, Todd on BoJack Horseman, they
Yeah,
handled his asexuality well.
I
I
actually
I
haven't
couldn't get
seen
through
that.
that.
Like I know that that's an asexual character who exists, and also very importantly that that's an asexual character in like a cartoon, which BoJack Horseman isn't aimed at young people by any means, but it's neat to see asexuals like in cartoons. It's just that like I haven't actually sat down and watched the show, so.
Yeah, as far as what the cool hip kids are doing, I know none of it. And that's a problem on my part, not on anybody else's. And that's why I said earlier, if somebody wants to correct me, I
Mhm.
am willing to be corrected because, like I said, I don't keep up very well.
So now also, yes, BoJack Horseman, the main character of the show, is in fact asexual. That's just a canon BoJack Horseman fact. I actually tried to get a chance to write with one of the writers for BoJack Horseman, who the person themselves was an ace, but like they were one of the lead writers, and they were like, "Hey, we're looking for writers," and I tried to get into that. I didn't get selected, but I at least tried.
And it's not BoJack that is ace, it's Todd. Todd
Oh,
is the one that's ace.
I don't know. I don't know the show, and
I don't know either, but but my friend is in the chat, and
Mhm.
if I don't listen to what she says, she knows where I live. In fact, I'm pretty sure she knows what part of the house I sleep in. So you kind of don't want to have the wrath of my best friend here.
I get it. I actually do want to sit down and like watch that show. But now before we start to bring this actual stream to a close, I wanted to ask you if folks who saw this wanted to collaborate with you in some way, would you mind talking about any collaborations you'd be interested in for other folks?
Um,
This was
I
not a
haven't.
question on the list. I just wanted to like
Yeah, I
yeah.
haven't thought too much about collaborations. I do know that for right now, I do prefer like smaller to medium audiences because I'm very nervous and I'm very new, and I kind of like the different atmosphere of it. Um, I've tried to interact with some of the bigger channels, and I feel like I just get lost in a sea of people. Um, so, but I've enjoyed doing this with you. I would love to do collabs. Um, if if any other Ace content creators, like I really appreciate Slice of Ace. I really do. He does. He's very much slice of life Ace.
Mm,
Um, the like he had a video on what it's like to date as an ace in Britain and like daily life kind of things, and he like I really like his channel, but honestly I haven't thought a lot about it because it's like I'm the new kid on the block,
yeah.
and a lot of people are just like I don't want to interview you until I know what you're really about, which I completely understand because people have been like, "Oh, I'll bring you on my channel," and then go, "Oh no, I regret this. I regret everything. I regret my life choices." So,
Well, I hope that I haven't checked, so it's entirely possible that you're already doing this. But if you don't have like a public playlist of times when you've been on other people's stuff, and if you really do like collaborations, because not everyone's super into collaborations, and I get that. But if you do like collaborating, even in this super chill way where you just show up and we have like a little Google Hangout and we have like a little listening party, so to speak. I do recommend doing that so that way folks can go over to your channel. I'm going to be chatting with Sassy Atheist, not today, but like later this week. We're going to be talking about like what it's like being a queer ex-Christian. And I'm super excited for that because I went to a Christian school. She and I talked a little bit about that, and I'm super looking forward to that conversation. It's going to be on Sunday. And like, but she also has like that little playlist already, so she's
yeah.
on it, and I have it. But because I do so many collaborations, if you only know me and you don't know that many other YouTubers in the secular community, I collaborate every single week with another YouTuber named Wonder Lady. I've also been on monthly shows talking about politics, like Bemeasle Bub, whose name I butchered just now. Bub and I are part of the Seven Princes over on Bub's channel. And then I was part of a British podcast where we talked about political news in the US and in the UK. But that show, because of a couple of reasons, Mike Silver, who was the main host, had to like step down for a little bit. So we haven't done it in a little bit. But I know the next time we do it, we're going to be talking about like Theresa May's retirement, whole bunch of super fun stuff.
Yeah, I am down for collabs. I would probably be excited to have a collab with a lot of different people. It's just I guess it's partially also my social awkwardness. I
I
don't want to like go out and bug people who are probably already being bugged by 100 different people going, "Put me on your channel." So I'm just like, I will wait until I'm invited or somebody mentions an interest and then, but as far as like reaching out to people that, and I know that that's something I need to work on, but like I said, I don't want to bug people. I'd rather have them come to me. And I'd rather not be a nuisance.
Yeah, I understand that. You are not a nuisance. And as someone who has social anxiety, like I've literally been diagnosed with it. I feel that. I feel that in, I don't know what the atheistic equivalent of the soul is, and I know some atheists believe in the soul. I don't. The naturalistic equivalent of the soul, whatever that is, I feel it because I have like literal social anxiety, and the feeling of like knowing that I might bug someone is like I wouldn't wish that special kind of hell on my worst enemy. So I feel you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now that the interview, there is going to be an after party. It's on my channel. If you guys want to go click on like my channel thing and then go over to the upcoming live streams, I'm gonna try and get the shareable link and I'm gonna put it in the comments, or I'm gonna put it in the live chat right now. But we are going to be having an after party for an hour or so. And I would love for folks to come on down. If you want to actually be in the chat with Tria and I, that's cool. But you gotta let us know so that way I can send you like the little link, because the whole point of the after party is for other folks to be able to come and chat with the guest, assuming the guest is open for that. And I want to thank you so much for being the first guest. I know that like I'm a super fun person to have an interview with, hopefully, because I'm so chatty anyway. But I know that it's probably a little bit nerve-wracking, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. It was nerve-wracking, but I did have fun. I think you and I are kind of on the same page on a lot of stuff, and it's like the feels, twist the knife a little harder, why don't you? Kind of thing. But I had fun. Thank you so much for letting me crash your channel. Appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the after show.
All right, guys, we'll see you around. I do hope that if you're here, you do go to the after, like you do come to the after party, even if you don't have like a YouTube or whatever. If you want to come, and you're someone that I know or that Tria knows, that's cool. Just leave a comment here in the next like 2 minutes, or send me a DM on Twitter, because there's some folks here who follow me on Twitter already. Peace out, friends.
Bye.